into the future, what do you see? I really need to know now, is there a place for me? If we're gonna survive, the dream must stay alive.
Authorities are appealing for calm throughout the evacuation process.
The Tribe, A New World by A.J. Penn. Chapter 9. The Morat stood on the open deck of the cargo ship, the vast stacks of metal containers all around them, their contents still a mystery, as was what had happened to the ship's crew, causing their demise. The crew had been laid out on the deck, their remains covered in blankets and linen found in the cupboards and cabins of the accommodation tower structure. Amber thought of Bray suddenly. She wished he was here. He was so wise, philosophical. He would have known what to say to the situation. But now it was up to Amber to preside over the funeral of the ship's crew. Following the gruesome discovery in the bridge, the rest of the accommodation quarters had been explored, and Amber and the others were convinced that there was no one else alive on board the ship except themselves. A few more bodies had been found, lying in beds inside cabins, another in the kitchen galley. The bodies couldn't be left there forever, so it was partly a practical decision to bury the dead. More than that, though, Amber felt they owed it to the crew, whoever they were, to give them a dignified send-off, and to pay their respects. Some of the others looked at Amber, waiting for her to speak, while the rest stared at the shrouded bodies before them, contemplating their thoughts. Celine had her arms around Trudy in an encouraging hug. Trudy fought back tears. She had been freaked out by the discovery of the dead, really spooked. It reminded her so much of the old times, when the adults first passed away. Many memories, painful to her core, flooded back as she looked at the covered remains of the crew, images of her parents and family flashing before her eyes. Though she was showing the most visible signs of emotional distress, she was not alone. Everyone was feeling much the same as her, thinking similar thoughts, encountering the ghosts of the past. We stand here to pay our respects to those who have gone before, Amber began. We don't know who they were, where they were from, but one thing was for sure. They would have been someone's son or daughter, perhaps parents themselves, brothers, sisters, whatever happened to them. We hope that they are now at peace, and I would ask you all to join me in a moment's silence before committing their souls. The wind drifting in from the ocean began to pick up, howling in gusts through the gaps in the metal containers stacked throughout the mammoth vessel. It was as if the ship was haunted by an unknown presence, causing Trudy to steal uneasy looks around. And she wasn't the only one. Some of the others, including even Lex, were just as uneasy. This was such an unusual place for a funeral, Amber thought, waiting for the wind to subside so she could continue. They had all endured loss, said their goodbyes to loved ones, in many different places back on land, and now they were doing so again. Amber hadn't expected to even encounter adults. Now, in a way, they had to bury the past all over once more. Everything has its beginnings and endings, Amber went on. Life is no different. We are all born, and we all, one day, will meet our end. But we live on forever, in memory, and though we didn't know the crew of this ship, they have touched us and reminded us never to forget the adults, all those from our past who were special to us, who will always be a part of us. Out of the ruins of the old, we will create a new future. We owe it to them, to those who have gone before, but most of all, we owe it to ourselves. Amber looked at her son, a symbol of hope for the future, being cradled in Jay's strong arms. Life will continue. It will endure. There will be challenges to meet, but we'll face them, head on. We promise you this, whoever you were. Amber addressed the covered crew members. Your passing will not have been in vain. The old times, the adults, none of it will be forgotten. We'll pass down the stories of the past to our children. We will ensure there is a future. Somehow, humanity will survive. May God bless you. And I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say our only hope now is that you all rest in peace. Amber nodded to the others. One by one, the covered corpses were carefully lowered over the side of the ship and dropped into the ocean below. Stepping forward, Amber helped lift the last of the crew members, grabbing hold of the linen shroud. She thought of the others from the past she had buried, her parents, her best friend Dal, and her heart ached for those she had lost, her lover Bray. Life was so precious, beautiful. As the final crew member was released overboard, Amber vowed that somehow, for the sake of her son, for the others, for her, they would get through this. They would survive. She would do everything to make sure of that. Give all that she had so that they wouldn't end up suffering the same fate of the crew. Their destiny wouldn't be to end their days on the vast cargo ship. Or so she hoped. It would take several days for the tribe to explore every inch of the container ship. It was that massive in scale. They had checked every cabin, storeroom, and most compartments on all the decks, but would need to assess all the containers and the contents to confirm that there was indeed nobody else on the ship. Just them. Then they would need to identify some kind of a plan, and to see if Jack and perhaps even Ram could work out a way to navigate the vessel to a destination, whatever that destination might be. The issue now was to settle into daily life in their new home. It felt strange at first. The living quarters in the 5-story accommodation tower structure still had the personal remnants of the crew, with everything left in the same state since each item was last touched. It was like the Marie Celeste, seeing the chairs, the cutlery, dishes left in the kitchen galley, and clothes hung in the cupboards, almost like time had been frozen since the adult days, with everything unchanged. Compared to the little trawler that the tribe had survived on for so many weeks, the enormous cargo ship was like being in a floating palace. Now, everybody had their own bed. There were more than enough cabins to go around. Just so much space. Settling inside their cabin, May and Zack were putting their own personal touches to their temporary new home. Zack was making the beds, while May was inside the ensuite bathroom. It was no secret what their priority was. Being alone, they were now a couple. So rather than having their own individual cabins, they were going to share one. She looked a mess, May thought, examining her reflection in the bathroom mirror. No one had washed for weeks. They all stank, filth all over them, their hair mottled. May could hardly bear to look at herself, but she took comfort that she aroused something in Zack. Not just sexually. It was clear that he was also interested in her as a person. Twisting the tap on the shower, May hoped that by some miracle the ship would have some running water. She heard the pipes connected to the bathroom creaking and grinding. Nothing. Not a drop came out of the shower. "Is that normal? You making so many noises going to the bathroom?" Zack quipped, calling out from the bedroom as he made the beds. "Ha ha, it isn't me," May smiled, twisting the tap on the shower further clockwise, disappointment showing on her face as her hopes were dashed. Suddenly, the water exploded out of the shower head, hitting May in the face. She yelped out. Zack rushed in to see May leaping up and down for joy in the shower as cold, clear water flowed all over. "You never told me you wear your clothes in the shower either," Zack beamed as he cast an admiring glance at the wet garments clinging to her shapely body.